Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku had mechanical quirk part 3. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. And also go support the JUSTUS3138 for writing that awesome fanfic. Let's start this video. After All Might announced the winner, some medical bots came out to cart my best friend to the witch they call a nurse. In order to save my friend, I had to reveal Kachan's unofficial secondary quirk. "Kachan, you lost." I shouted as loud as I could. "Like fuck I did." He screamed while sitting up ramrod straight. "We discovered this little quirk when I accidentally knocked him out the first time we sparred, and I mentioned that he lost to me to the paramedic. I think the poor EMT was close to a heart attack when my friend, like just now, bolted upright shouting his denial. All Might still wanted him to go in case he had a concussion. I had to explain that it was practically impossible for Kachan to ever get a concussion. With all the practice we put in, our bodies adapted to the strain our quirks put on them. For me, the muscle memory of moving every little piece of me increased, and Bakugo's internals became so resistant to concussive force that in order to damage him internally, you either had to stab him or hit him with enough force to get past his resistance. By that point though, you're going to be shattering bone. In short, the force needed to give him a concussion was greater than the force needed to cave his skull in. Only reason I was able to knock him out was because the way his head hit the ground. The force flung his body over his head, and his incredibly sturdy spine stopped any breakage, but the stress on his nerves overloaded them, resulting in his previously unconscious state. In short, me and my best friend got to watch the rest of the fights, and I had another point for why restrictions on quirk use should be lessened. Part of the reason that people's quirks are so detrimental to their health so quickly is because they don't practice with them a lot. A child with wings who flies to school is going to be stronger and healthier than the same kid with the same quirk who takes the bus instead. A former classmate of mine had wings and was overweight, case in point. The four of us plus our teacher just made it back to the monitor room where the rest of the class was waiting. The MVP of this exercise was a tie between Midoriya and Iida. Can anyone guess why? All Might asked. "Sir, I can tell you why," Momo declared. Iida embraced this challenge. He was the only one who truly adapted to his assigned role. The only mark he has against him is that he didn't consider Midoriya's shapeshifting. Midoriya also only has one minor slip when he wasted time trying to fight Bakugo, rather than going for the weapon, which he later did. As you pointed out earlier, launching a large-scale attack indoors was a foolish move. It could have been disastrous, eliminating Bakugo from being MVP. As for Uraraka, she let her guard down mid-battle and had to rely on her partner's sneak attack to recover the advantage she had. She finished. "You did miss a few things. Young Iida could have relaxed in the exercise, but otherwise you nailed it," All Might replied. "I actually disagree with one point of her assessment," I added, silencing everyone. "Go on," my predecessor encouraged. "Everyone has been assuming that our time limit is because if we fail in that time the bomb goes off and unleashes nuclear hell, correct?" I asked. All our classmates nodded. "Then aside from the fact that this is a training exercise, what incentive does the villain team have to value their personal safety? Even if they have access to a warp quirk to get clear of the blast the instant it goes off, the chance of the heroes being able to disable the bomb within that time is too great for them to leave it to chance. Odds are that those who are guarding it are willing to die to set it off. If Iida is getting points for staying in character, then Bakugo should at the very least not have it held against him for almost blowing up the building," I pointed out. "Destroying the building and taking out the heroes eliminates the possibility of someone disabling the bomb, and damage to the weapon is more likely to set it off than disable it, so Bakugo's over-the-top explosion was actually the best move he had when he couldn't guarantee the weapon's safety from the heroes." I finished. "You are also correct, Midoriya, though a bit extreme. I should have been more clear on the villain's objectives to avoid such a hazardous assumption. From now on the timer is not a countdown to detonation, but how long the villains need for their warp quirk to recover for another jump to get away," All Might declared. "I don't need you defending me, Deku," Kachan shouted. "Good thing I only pointed it out to avoid any more explosions. One walking boomstick is all I can handle in my life." Everyone chuckled at that. Once the commotion of getting the next team selected and sent out died down, the tall hot eye approached me in the back of the room. "That was very insightful of you, Midoriya," she spoke. "Thank you, but I didn't do it to defend my friend. God knows he needs to learn that dropping a building on it is not the solution to every problem." "Then why did you do it?" she asked. "All Might," I replied. All I got was a raised eyebrow. He has many accolades to his name, but his teaching license is honorary. He is doing exceptionally well for someone who has no formal teaching experience. But he is assuming that us students will be able to follow his unsaid direction when it is his job to guide us through something we have no clue how to do. I replied. "You were trying to help him be a better teacher?" she queried. The young teacher asked her elementary class to do a creative writing assignment about someone being in a new and strange place. She wanted a story about how this school is scary, and I hope to make friends. One kid gave her a graphic depiction of a squid dying in a forest. She gave a little snort at that. But in our case, All Might wanted us to face off against each other in an indoor battle with a half-baked scenario that was open to interpretation with a very real bomb with an attitude problem. That room for interpretation just about had a building dropped on 4 students, and 3 would have been injured or killed from it. Do you by chance dislike All Might? She asked almost innocently. My brain actually stalled for a moment. I'm sorry, did you just accuse a shameless All Might fan of not liking him? Eh? Was her intelligent response. I'm kidding, not about the shameless fan part but the indignation. I clarified. Before our conversation could continue, All Might announced the start of the next trial. To call it one-sided would be an understatement. We could feel the chill from all the way over here. The level of control that Todoroki has over his ice could only be achieved through countless hours of practice. Most people would assume that his power comes from his quirk and nothing else, but I can see the blood, sweat and tears put into getting to where he is at. Didn't I tell you we would find competition here, Kachin? I whispered to my friend. For you maybe. Was his response. He wasn't fooling me. He was honestly worried. It's a good thing I've helped with his inferiority complex, or he might be having a mini meltdown. For those of you wondering how I helped him out on his complex, it's quite simple. I kicked his ass, repeatedly. If I weren't there to challenge him, he would have been stuck in a rut with empty praise fueling his ego. I keep Kachin as humble as I can. Some would say I failed miserably, but they don't know how bad it could have been. Other than Todoroki, the other matches were pretty straightforward. I still made mental notes on everyone's quirks, potential uses and weaknesses. That's a wrap. Super work. You really stepped up to the plate and we didn't have any major injuries. You should be proud. Excellent first day of training, all around. All Might declared in his over-the-top fashion that I still cannot get enough of. It's nice to hear some encouraging words after our homeroom class. Mr. Azawa was kind of a buzzkill. Sayu summed up. I'm happy to bring such staggering positivity to my alma mater. That's all for now, folks. I should take care of my paperwork. Now watch how a pro exits. Like he's got somewhere to be. All Might encouraged while running faster than most cars. Okay you guys, that is a hero. I'll never be able to run that fast. Super awesome. I however knew what was really going on and wasn't as happy-go-lucky as everyone else. All Might could barely teach a class without losing his form. He may be able to keep heroing for another year, but I'm not sure he's going to make it through a year of teaching if he insists on doing it in his buff form. Hey. Midoriya. Are you going to go to lockers with us or are you going to do your shape-shifting thing? Kirishima asked. I was still in my combat form. Got nothing better to do. I replied. I was kind of curious. Never had to use a locker room before, so this would be novel. Locker room, I didn't miss much and I could do without the smell. So, Midoriya, what are the limits of your shape-shifting if it's not too personal? Asked our resident Raven. I was kind of surprised that he would be the one to ask. He seemed more the quiet type. Solid or liquid shapes only, so I can't pull off Endeavor's flaming hair. Nothing smaller than my total body mass or too much, though I can hollow myself out to somewhat compensate. While I can replicate the shape of something, I can't change the chemical makeup of my body like Yaoi Rozu can. I listed off. So, you could imitate me? Tokoyami asked. Now I know why he spoke up. To answer him, I decided to give it a go. In under 10 seconds there stood 2 raven-headed teens with towels wrapped around their waists. Whoa. Kaminari surmised. Click click click. Having a beak feels weird. I said in my voice after giving my new lips a test drive. I wouldn't know. Our feathered friend shrugged. So, is your junk the same size too? Kaminari asked with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. Didn't know a bird could blush, Tokoyami was proving it though. Yes, and I know your size too, keep it civil, and I won't spill the beans to the girls. I half threatened, not knowing how I would even do that without coming off like a creep. Okay, just wondering. He apologized. Can you mimic women just as well? The resident pervert Mineta asked. I was tempted not to answer, but now everyone in the locker room minus Kachin and Todoroki were looking at me with barely concealed curiosity, plus I'm comfortable with my body and all its quirks. This is just going to bug everyone until I answer. Yes, I can mimic everything when impersonating a woman, everything. I stressed. But I don't like keeping it up for long periods of time, and it's just not my thing. Body dysmorphism? The Raven asked. Yes, how Yaoi Rozu can fight while wearing heels and no sports bra is a mystery I don't think I will ever figure out. I tried it once in junior high, and having the equivalent of a pair of melons loosely strapped to your chest plays havoc with your sense of balance, and forcing those puppies to stay still makes them look fake, ruining the camouflage. I ranted, still mimicking Tokoyami. It was the one weakness of my mimicry that still bugs me. I take pride in being able to imitate others perfectly. Almost perfectly. Keep talking like that, Deku, and people will think you're a pervert. My friend quipped, trying to get a shot in. Too bad I have more ammo than him. Then what does it say about you when I use Lady Kachin? I fired back, smirking to get used to the beak. Bakugo was almost as red as a tomato. That one is losing its effect. But I am the best no matter which gender I am. He shouted. I should have seen that coming. Lady Kachin? Iida asked. Bakugo tried to tease me about being able to effectively turn into a girl, so I turned into an older female version of him and claimed I was his older sister for a day despite the vertigo. I dropped. Everyone laughed at that one and poked for more answers out of the living stick of dynamite. Once we made it back to homeroom, the rest of the school day was reserved for regular classes. Near the end of it, we had some free time to go over the results of our battle training. I didn't have much to go over, so I spent that time giving everyone what little tips for their quirks I could. Overall, not a bad day. The start of the next, however, was a circus, and not even a fun one. A battalion of reporters were hanging out in front of UA, harassing students and faculty for anything on the newest teacher. I pity those who can't slip by them by impersonating a reporter. Didn't even have to change my face. Just age myself a bit and throw on the news agency accessories of my choice, and none of them noticed until I crossed the threshold. By then it was too late for them to catch me. Decent work on yesterday's combat training, you guys. I saw the video feeds and went over each of your team's results. Bakugo, you're talented. So, don't sulk like a child about your loss, okay? Yeah, whatever. And Midoriya, stay focused on the objective. Wasting time isn't logical. Fix that and you'll be a force to be reckoned with. Aizawa complimented backhandedly. Let's get down to business. Our first task will decide your future. You could feel the tension in the air. You all need to pick a class representative. The relief was also palpable. And the shouting of "pick me." Normally the class rep just gets saddled with extra work that nobody wants. But here in the hero course it has more significance. Agencies love it when you have tangible proof that you can lead a team well under pressure. Silence, everyone, please. Thank you, Iida. The class representative's duty is to lead others. That's not something just anyone can do. You must first have the trust of every student in the classroom. Therefore, the most logical way to fill this position is democratically. We will hold an election to choose our leader. He prattled on. It was obvious that he wants to take the position. Is this really the best idea? Asked Kaminari. We've only known each other a few days, how do we know who we can trust? Sayu supplied. Besides, everyone will just vote for themselves. Kirishima pointed out. Most people will. But that means whoever does receive multiple votes must truly be the most suitable person for the job. It's the best way, right, sir? Iida asked our lazy homeroom teacher. Do what you want, just decide before my nap's over. He answered before falling over in his sleeping bag. Thank you for your trust. Iida exclaimed, missing Aizawa's apathy. And if we don't like who we pick, we can just lynch them afterwards if they don't want to step down. I joked. I was met with silence. I've been around Bakugo since we were kids. I blame him for my morbid sense of humor. I defended. Surprisingly, most of the class nodded at that. Why do you always blame me for your problems, Deku? Denied said friend. Because most of the time you are the source of strife in my life, and if I ever start Robot Armageddon, I will make sure the survivors remember that your bad influence caused it. I teased. While he and I bickered, everyone else was going through with the voting. Once ours were added, Iida counted them out. Somehow, I got 3 votes and Momo got 2. Okay, you idiots, who voted for him? Kachin demanded. What did you honestly think anyone was going to vote for you? The walking tape dispenser asked. Which caused Bakugo to devolve into his usual denials and threats. Iida was also lamenting the results with his lack of any votes. Honestly, he is way too rigid. Alright, the class rep is Midoriya and our deputy is Yaoi Rozu. Aizawa declared with the 2 of us standing in front of the class. You guys just want to see if I will live in fear of getting lynched, don't you? I accused. Silence. Then I guess we shall see if you will get your wish. But that it was time for lunch. It's always so crowded in the cafeteria with all the other departments sharing the same block for lunch. Currently I was sharing a table with Iida and Achako, who just voiced my own thoughts. So, who do you think voted for me? I asked them. Both of them froze mid-sentence. Seriously, you both voted for me? I asked, slightly bewildered. Their courage and quick thinking under stress will make you a worthy leader. Not to mention the strength you demonstrated. Those are the reasons I voted for you at least. He answered. Didn't you want to be rep really badly? I mean, you do look the part. Cause of the glasses? Achako asked. Sometimes I wonder what goes on inside of that girl's head. Though I don't think anyone in the hero course can claim to be sane in any sense of the word. Wanting a job and being suited to it are quite different things. Observing the Iida family's hero agency has taught me that much. I thought I recognized that style of armor. You're Ingenium's younger brother, aren't you? I asked. How did you figure out that I was his younger brother? Iida questioned. I like to keep up to date on heroes both present and past, and the only Iida currently active as a hero is Ingenium. Given the time of his debut, he would have had to have been 12 or so when you were born. So, either he is a ladies' man or your brother's. I explained. I knew you were rich, Iida. Exclaimed Achako. Ignoring her, Iida continued. Insightful, like how you figured out the true meaning of the entrance exam. A rep needs that. I didn't save her for rescue points, Iida. I may have had suspicions about the 0-pointer, but that was all. I saved our friend here because it was the right thing to do. If the school told us that such actions would have deducted points, I still would have done the exact same thing. I explained. Both of my new friends were silent, as if asking me to continue. For me, being a hero isn't about the money, the fame or legacy. It's about helping people with a smile on my face when they need it, because everyone will face a crisis in their lives, and if no one is there to help them, then it may just be the last thing they ever face. I only hope that when I face my darkest hour that I will have friends willing to stand by me as we brave that darkness. I declared. All Might may be the #1 hero, but the rest of the top 10 put together save more people than him annually by a huge margin. I'm not as arrogant as my childhood friend to believe that I can defeat all evil by myself. There will come a time when we will all need the help of others to get the job done. Quirks are not able to change that intrinsic aspect of humanity. At least not yet, and a part of me hopes that that will never change. Before we could continue our discussion, an alarm went off. Warning level 3 security breach. All students please evacuate the building in an orderly fashion. Said a recording over the PA. Iida asked a guy sitting next to us what level 3 meant. Turns out someone made it past the school's barrier. While this was going on, I was hacking into the security cameras in the school through the phone in my pocket. Better tell Nezu that having a wireless connection to the security feed is a vulnerability. By the time I got tapped in and found out it was just the media who got in, the whole cafeteria was in a panic trying to fit through a hallway. Someone could get hurt. This will not do. I dispersed my body into a cloud/sandstorm of particles, ignoring the thought of my phone being damaged. I began moving between everyone to get to the narrowed exit door. This simultaneously had the effect of getting me to my destination and freezing those who saw and heard me pass by them. My particles reached the exit, and I began moving them to stretch up to the ledge above the door, using the metal support beams in the wall to cling to with my magnetic field. As more of me reached my destination, I pulled myself back together in a sitting position. For a brief second, everyone could see the understructure of my body. This also helped in grabbing everyone's attention. Everyone calm down. It's just the media outside. There's nothing to worry about. We are UA students, is this how we act when an alarm goes off? I demanded. Right on K, the police siren signaled the end of this debacle. Everyone calmed down and order was restored. The rest of the day blew by me, giving half-distracted answers to everyone. I was going through all the video footage the security cameras picked up and found holes in the recordings. They started at the gate, and by logical deduction, I plotted the path that the person who destroyed the front gate took. I have no idea what they could have wanted in the faculty lounge or how they wiped the security footage, but I was going to inform the principal at the end of the school day. I hope it was just a crazy fan with mad skills, but I can't help but feel that whoever did this has much more sinister intentions. Doesn't matter how good you are at taking down bad guys if you cannot save people from environmental dangers. That's why All Might remains the #1 hero, and Endeavor has never been able to take the position from him in his entire career, despite closing significantly more cases. Removing people from danger is difficult when you deliberately cover yourself in flames. While All Might is someone whose very presence brings comfort, Endeavor can only achieve that while in the middle of a blizzard. Azawa gave us the option to either use our gear or training uniforms. Everyone but me had to decide now because we were going to an off-campus facility. I decided to try out my leather jacket, jeans and red high tops costume option. Iida tried to get me to agree with his idea of organizing almost every aspect of how we would board the bus. Not seating arrangements only, but who would get on first to reach the back and sit. I had to politely tell him that the time spent informing and organizing every one of his plans would take longer than if we just let everyone decide for themselves. My point was driven home even further when we found out that the bus had open seating. Iida, you really need to chill. Mina declared, to the agreement of everyone. If we are pointing out the obvious, then there's something I want to say about you actually. Asui said while looking at me. Oh? I asked. That move of yours, isn't it a lot like All Might's? She asked, while I was contemplating whether or not a quirk is Esper rather than Frog. Thankfully, I am good at improv. I am a bit of an All Might fan and have been trying to replicate his signature moves for the last 10 months. I'm still working out the kinks as you all saw. I answered without revealing the truth. A bit of an All Might fan. Kakin asked with clear sarcasm in his voice. I wouldn't be throwing stones in a glass house there, Kakin. Or should I call you Mr. Gonna be the next #1 hero? I countered before we both revealed the other has a borderline shine to the current #1 in our closets. You can call me Mr. Gonna kick your ass. Was his intelligent and predictable reply. Bakugo's always angry, so he will never be that popular. Sue said, verbally bitch slapping him. I am in awe of the sheer balls on this frog, and guys do not say that often when referring to someone of the opposite gender. Before Bakugo could really get going with his threats, Kaminari took a few shots. You know, we basically just met you. So, it's kinda telling that we all know your personality is flaming crap mixed with garbage. I don't have any ice for that burn, maybe Todoroki will make some. You're gonna regret the day you applied to this school, you loser. Was Kakin's response. After that it devolved into a free-for-all on my friend. Nobody dared to tease him in middle school. It's good to see people other than me who aren't scared of him. Hey, we're here, stop messing around. Aizawa snapped tiredly. Everyone automatically replied, yes sir. Except for Kakin, who belligerently said, whatever. I have never been able to understand my friend's obsessive need to stand out from everyone else. I get that it's his way of trying to be the #1 hero, but how does being grating to everyone else help? While I'm thinking about the paradox that is my best friend, everyone has gotten off the bus, and Ichako is gushing over the Space Hero 13. The USJ was one of UA's training facilities that I had obtained the blueprints for during my many jaunts through the school's computer system. Didn't take away from the enormity of the facility when I laid my own eyes on it. The Space Hero 13 came out to greet us before we entered the USJ. They are a good example of a rescue hero and how the profession isn't all about fighting villains. A hurricane can kill more people and do more damage in a day than most organized crime syndicates accomplish in their entire history. Rescue heroes are the most altruistic and underappreciated group within the heroics industry. Natural disasters are more often than not overlooked in favor of the latest villain who managed to get people's attention with his or hers manifesto and are disturbing acts of violence. Even before Quirks, humanity has had a fascination with serial killers. I think the fascination stems from the fact that many serial killers are the result of too many bad things happening to someone at once, and a fear that if you are put into the same situation with the same set of circumstances leading up to it, you may do the exact same thing. 13 has just finished lecturing on how quirks used recklessly can do more harm in a rescue attempt than good. Something I'm sure my friend who could use this lesson the most has probably ignored. Right, now that that's over, before Aizawa could finish, an electrical surge went through the lights overhead, shorting them out. The others couldn't feel it, but the connection I had through my phone to the internet was severed. That's how I knew this wasn't an ordinary blackout. Stay together and don't move. 13 protect the students. Aizawa shouted, an edge of urgency I had never heard from him before. Looking over the plaza I found out the reason. The black mist had spread out like a wall in front of the central fountain. Villains of all shapes and sizes were coming out of said mist. If I had a heart, it would be hammering right now. Focus Izuku. Analyze everything. I told myself to push past the initial fear. Turning my gaze to the flood of criminals. The only villains that stick out were the first one and last two to appear. Hansi must have an emitter-type quirk around his hands, the extra nerves and internal mutations are a giveaway. The mist guy doesn't have a solid body besides a metal neck brace hidden from the normal vision spectrum. Now what about the tall guy with an exposed brain? I thought before focusing on him. I can't physically throw up, but I would be right now if I could. The internal scarring from medical procedures were overlapping. Muscle attachments and density were comparable to All Might. These weren't the things that made every particle of my body crawl. His brain activity was only slightly above a coma patient's. Nobody would consent to this. To be altered so much that your very sense of self is destroyed and replaced by the equivalent of a biological wind-up toy. Mr. Aizawa, stay away from Birdbrain, he's in the same weight class as All Might without activating a quirk. I warned. The insomniac of a teacher gave a slight nod of his head before jumping into the fray. Quite literally, I don't think I saw his feet touch the stairs at all. My thoughts on Aizawa's secret float quirk were overcome by awe at his skill with his capture weapon and hand-to-hand combat. It was like watching a weed whacker go through dandelions. An accurate assessment considering the circular movements of his capture weapon. Those few moments of analysis left me at the back of the group as 13 led my classmates to the exit. Whose idea was it to design such a distance between the doors and stairs? We were paying for that architectural flaw now. Aizawa must have blinked if the Black Mist villain was able to slip away and bar us from leaving. There is no escape for you. It's a pleasure to meet you. We are the League of Villains. I know it's impolite, but we decided to invite ourselves into this have of justice to say hello. And besides, isn't this a fitting place for All Might, the symbol of peace, to take his last breath? I believe he was supposed to be here today, and yet I see no sign of him. There must have been some sort of change in plans we could not have foreseen. Ah well, in the end, I suppose it doesn't matter. The villainous mist monologue. He spread his foggy arms out. I still have a role to play. The black mist threatened. Before he could go through with that threat, Kakin and Kirishima tried to hit him with explosions and fists. A bad move in my opinion. All they probably did is obscure our vision and get in 13's way. You live up to your school's reputation. But you should be more careful, children. Otherwise, someone might get hurt. I hate it when I'm right. I'll scatter you across this facility to meet my comrades and your deaths. The villain declared, spreading himself across the whole area. Before I could move out of the way, my classmates and I were enveloped in black mist. Well, he spelled out his intentions and I could probably escape the mass warping like I saw Shoji do so. It was easy math to figure out which students would be in more danger. I decided to help those who would need it more and let myself get swept away. Once the black fog in my vision cleared, I immediately regretted my decision and tried to gather as much air inside myself as I could. I don't need to breath, but not having regular-sized lungs and weighing at least 3 times more than a normal person makes swimming a real challenge. I can make little air pockets throughout my mass to increase buoyancy, but this has its own problems. I feel like a balloon with the air pockets I need to make room for, and I cannot shift the mass surrounding the captured air without losing it and sinking like a brick. An exercise in mental restraint when I am used to shifting mass instinctively to maintain balance. In short, I am a bloated, sluggish, sitting duck. Stuck in the middle of the shipwreck zone waiting for the villains to come and have their wicked way with me. Oh, my what big teeth the first one has. Before I and the half-fish villain could figure out if my sushi making skills were better than his balloon popping ones, Sue nailed him in the face with both of her feet, snagged me with her tongue, and promptly fucked off leaving the deep sea reject in the dust. I was a little surprised that she was able to lift me onto the boat, but then again, most animal quirks increase the bearer's strength when not confined to one body part like Tokoyami's head. Her rough treatment of Mineta was not a surprise however, shameless pervert. This is turning out to be a terrible day of class. Sue declared once she got on the boat. And I doubt it's going to get better, that villain spelled out their plan. Kill All Might and they knew our schedule. They probably are the ones who let the media in at lunch yesterday and snuck in while the teachers were distracted. I answered. Hey, hold on a second. It's not like these guys can really kill All Might. Once he shows up, he'll pound those villains until there's nothing left. Mineta interrupted. Think about it though. If the villains spent so much time planning this attack, then they probably figured out a way to kill him. And didn't you hear what that smoke guy said? Maybe we should worry more about not getting tortured to death. Otherwise, we might not survive long enough to see All Might again. And even if he does show up, who knows if he will make out in one piece. Sue explained, not noticing or caring how each word sent Mineta further and further into a panic attack. No, the pros are gonna save us, right? Tell Frog Boobs to shut up. I'm honestly tempted to toss the purple gumdrop to the villains, and Sue probably feels the same way if her indignant ribbit was any indication. Speaking of villains, they seemed to have decided to make an appearance and surround the boat. But that was it. Aside from the typical death threats that make B-movie villains cringe, they didn't come closer. A strategy was forming in my mind. Sue, Mineta, come here, I think I have a plan. I declared. The human grape, Frog and I huddled in closer to keep the unwanted fish from hearing us. So, what's your plan, Midoriya? Sue asked. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but your quirks are frog and pop off, right? Sue can jump real far and Mineta can detach the balls on his head and stick them to anything except himself, right? I asked. The silent stares were unwarranted. How did you figure that out? Sue asked, already assuming it was something nefarious, considering we never talked about our quirks yet. Too bad she's somewhat right. Anyways, cybersecurity is a joke. I regularly hack in and browse through student files to read up on quirks. I shamelessly admitted. I was asked by the principal to test it after all. Says the walking computer. Did you bribe the servers with upgrades or threaten them with malware? Sue joked. Do you want to hear the plan, Asui? I asked in a more clipped tone using her family name rather than Sue. Being compared to everyday computers has always been a sore spot for me. Strange thing is I'm not too sure why I get upset. Is it the inherent questioning of my humanity or is it because I see myself as better than those outdated hunks of junk? Either way, I outlined the plan. I would use a smash attack to disrupt the water surface, while Tsu and Mineta jump away to gain height and distance, while our miniature pervert throws as many of his sticky balls out as he can to trap the villains when they are sucked in by the water displacement. Our plan was a success. A 100% success. This time I tried flicking with just my fingers, and the results were better than I expected. It will take less than a minute for the particles making up my fingers to come back, and while the attack was less powerful than when my whole arm is used, I can fire it multiple times before having to wait for my hands to fix themselves. The League of Villains must be recruiting from a 1 to 800 henchmen line because these guys were pushovers. While we were making our way to the shore in the shallows, my fingers finished reconstructing themselves and my mind kept wandering to the fight in the central plaza. Aizawa, despite his experience, cannot keep up the kind of pace required to fight multiple foes for an extended duration. Eventually he is going to overexert himself and either the man-child or the monstrosity will pick him off. The answer to this problem is obvious, but he told us to avoid confrontation and our priority is to get away or get help. For Mineta and Tsu it's the most logical choice, but is it the best use of myself? I am without a doubt the most durable person here. Even Kirishima would fall short. These villains don't know how my quirk works and are unlikely to have some way of damaging me permanently. I guess the real question is, can I live with myself if there was something I could do and turn my back to follow my teacher's instructions? I already know the answer and I'm a terrible student. Mineta, Tsu, if you skirt around the edge of the plaza, you should be able to get to the entrance without running into villains. I declared. What about you, Midoriya? Tsu asked with an edge I didn't think she had. It's not a question of if but when Aizawa is going to run out of steam and be left to the not-so-tender mercy of these villains. I can pretend to be another grunt and assist if needed without much risk to my person. You guys do not have that luxury and it would ruin the deception if you were standing next to me and I wasn't trying to hurt you. I explained as quickly as I could. For a moment no one said anything. Tsu was processing my crazy plan and I would rather not guess what Mineta was thinking about. Fine, but don't do anything stupid. The level-headed frog answered. Your class would be boring without you. The pervert tacked on. When have I ever done anything stupid? I asked with a grin. But that we parted ways. I made my way to the edge of the shore closet to Aizawa while they took the long way around. Our teacher was still going. I had to question when he has the time to work on his cardio when he's always dead on his feet. The exchange between him and the guy with the obsession with severed hands lasted only a few seconds, but I was still able to follow everything. Aizawa used his scarf to both blind and drag him closer for an elbow strike. Normally this would increase the power and knock the wind out of someone. Hansi however managed to catch the elbow with his hand. When Aizawa's hair dropped things took a turn for the worse. Hansi's quirk requires 5-finger contact to activate. When it did the fabric and then skin of Eraserhead's elbow began to crack and fall apart. Before any more damage could be inflicted Aizawa slugged him and backed away. His right arm however was hanging limp. Didn't stop him from taking out more bad guys single-handedly. He was panting however, while Hansi was monologuing about how impressive Eraserhead is. This was a distraction to let the monstrosity get behind him. It was at this point that I couldn't stand back any longer, disguises be damned. 2% and my own speed boost technique carried me fast enough to get in front of my teacher. Duck. Was all I had time to shout before the bioweapon cocked its left arm. Aizawa didn't waste time and did as he was told. If he had been a half-second slower his head would have been caught between two fists and crushed. As it was the shockwave rattled me and sent him tumbling, thankfully away from the disintegration villain. Birdbrain didn't continue his assault. Apparently introducing a new variable caused him to wait for further instruction. I took the opportunity to get some distance. I saw how his flesh rippled from the impact. Some sort of shock absorption quirk, I think. It probably can handle All Might given their goal, so I have no chance of overpowering it with my limited control of One for All. Stalling was my best bet and fighting a last resort. Now this is interesting. I didn't think a mere student could match the anti-symbol of peace and strength, or is it durability? Hansi queried. A bit of both if I'm being honest. This guy however is a puzzle I can't quite figure out. I can see he's undergone some bioengineering that's left his brain back in the Stone Age. Care to satisfy a mere student's curiosity? I taunted. If I can keep the guy talking, he might reveal something and give myself and Eraserhead some breathing room. Now why would I do that? Hansi asked, amused by my brashness. Because you like games, RPGs, if your word choice while monologuing is any indication. Would it not be more sporting to give me a chance while you wait for All Might to show up? I answered, hoping he would take the bait. Not many people pick up on my hobby like you have. Are you by chance a fellow gamer? He asked, ignoring my original question. Who in this day and age hasn't dabbled? I admit I tend to lean more towards FPS games, but I have a soft spot for Metroidvanias. I answered honestly, trying to build some sort of rapport with the maniac. Makes my synthetic skin crawl. That explains it. Explains what? I asked, knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. Why, you thought you could trick me like some dumb shotgun ape. You're fishing for a weakness you can exploit with your quirk, whatever it may be, but I am the dungeon master and I am going to kill every player and NPC in this place until All Might shows up. He declared in true homicidal maniac fashion. The M's don't fight the boss, buddy. I corrected, knowing this conversation was about to end badly anyways. All Might isn't the boss, Nomu is. The now named Nomu perked up when his name was spoken. Kill him. Was all the warning I got. combated as then. Nomu's speed was impressive, I doubt anyone else could keep him in sight, much less react to him. I was able to do both, albeit barely. While fast his moves are telegraphed, and he pauses when the initial goal isn't reached due to his limited cognitive function. No finesse or skill, but when you have shock absorption theoretically capable of withstanding all might you shouldn't need it, but this guy's body is still humanoid and subject to the same weak points. The joints. The average knee only needs 5 pounds of force applied at the right angle and over a small surface area to break. My legs can generate significantly more force, and the side of the knee has virtually nothing between the skin and bone. Which is why when I dodged to his right and side kicked it, there was an audible crack despite his quirk. Before he could fall, I maneuvered myself behind him and delivered a devastating roundhouse to the side of his other knee. This had the same effect of the first kick. With 2 broken knees, Nomu had no choice but to topple forward. I jumped onto his back and grabbed one of his giant wrists, wrenching it backwards before he could try and stop me, and began to pull while placing my feet on his shoulder. Shock absorption only works with sudden impacts, not continuous force. Most people would need to jerk the arm to dislocate it, running into the same problem punches would have. I, however, with my shifting metal body, can keep applying more force like a floor jack until his shoulder dislocates. The sickening pop proved my theory. In the span of 10 seconds, I destroyed Nomu's knees and dislocated one of his arms. With only one functional arm left, he should only be able to crawl. I looked to see what the leader of this ragtag group's reaction was to me taking out his trump card in less than a minute. His shoulders were shaking, and the laughter was bordering on hysterical. Amusement was not what I had expected. Kids today are so cool. You took Nomu apart in under a minute and you weren't even trying, that's impressive, truly. So much potential, too bad you won't live to see another day. Before I could even contemplate his words, my vision blurred from how fast my head hit the concrete. I managed to catch a glimpse of my attacker through the big dark fingers holding my face. How did Nomu grab me with his dislocated arm so quickly? My priorities took a shift when he started slamming my head into the ground repeatedly. The damage was minimal and repairing almost as fast as he was slamming me, but it's the principle of the matter. Nobody ragdolls me and gets away with it. My right arm shifted into a 3-foot-long blade that was promptly shoved through Nomu's wrist with a bloody squelch. A quarter turn counterclockwise cut more tendons, loosening his grip, adding to my disgust. The yank back towards the way the blade went in almost finished the gruesome work of severing the appendage, grabbing my face. Me jerking my head back toward the rest of the ligaments holding the limb. The infernal hand slid off and fell with a wet plop onto the floor once it had nothing attached to it, giving me a clear view of my attacker. Nomu didn't show any signs of pain despite the clearly severed hand. It was eerie, almost inhuman how he just stood there on fixed knees like it was nothing. I guess that's why All Might was giving me those looks when I blew my own arm off trying to use one for all. Nomu's stump stopped bleeding and began to squirm. In a matter of seconds, a new skinless hand grew to replace the old one, followed shortly after by said missing skin. As if this day couldn't get any worse. 2 quirks, huh? I wonder how you guys managed that. Is that why he's practically brain dead? Too much strain on his mind having more quirks than he can handle? I asked, trying to get him talking while I take a moment to come up with a plan. Eraserhead is busy trying to keep the grunts off of himself with one hand and no rest. While I may be dealing with a regenerating juggernaut, I haven't taken any significant damage. Azawa, however, is hanging on by his teeth at this point. Best thing I can do for now is keep the heavy hitters away from him as long as possible. The job I am well suited to. Clever little hero, yes, there are just some things that even high-speed regeneration can't fix. But it's not like he needs to think to do his job. The nutcase answered flippantly. I don't know, he seems to be doing a pretty piss-poor job of killing me, and the guy in charge of thinking for him isn't much better. I antagonized like my best friend would have. Cute. But I must admit you fascinate me. Even if you had a durability quirk, you wouldn't have been able to shrug off those blows to the head like that and change your arm into a blade. Perhaps a full body mutation with optional transformations. I'd very much like to crack you open and see what makes you tick. Nomu. Before Hansi could finish giving Nomu his orders, the warper did his thing and appeared right next to the blue-haired villain. Tamura Shigaraki, the fog helpfully provided. Kurajiri, did you manage to kill 13? Shigaraki asked like a manager would his employees. The rescue hero is out of commission, but there were students I was unable to disperse, and one of them got outside of the facility. Kurajiri admitted. Kurajiri, you fool, if you weren't our warp gate, I'd tear apart every last atom in your body. Shigaraki ground out while barely holding back his anger and scratching his neck with both hands. There's no way we can win if dozens of pros show up to stop us. It's game over. Back to the title screen, and I was looking forward to finishing this today. Damn it. He thought out loud once his little tantrum was under control. But before we go home, we need to kill this brat. He walked off taking a beating from Nomu and cut off one of his hands. yet I still don't know what his quirk is. And here I thought he was going to just leave. Oh? Durability and transformation abilities. A rare combination, Master will want to study this one. Kurogiri said. This one is not the latest smartphone, thank you very much, and I doubt you will be able to take me anywhere without losing a limb, so I hope you can grow them back like your big dumb friend, or else this is going to be a short fight. I blustered, hoping they don't call my bluff. Truth is, with the warper now in play I am at a huge disadvantage. Not if I take yours first. You don't need your arms and legs. Nomu grabbed him. Several things happened in the seconds after Tamura finished telling Nomu what to do. I was pinned down by the monstrosity. His previous sluggish movements nowhere to be seen. Like he was programmed to grab people over fighting them. Shigaraki was so close that I was afraid that he might actually get a chance to use his quirk on me. Even if I were to disperse myself, I don't know if that would prevent him from getting the 5 points of contact needed to activate it. Before the terror could set in, Salvation came in and blew the doors off their hinges with a big boom to go with it. His stride was oozing confidence and reassurance. Have no fear, students. I am here. All Might declared. His smile was not present, he must be really pissed. Shigaraki was mumbling something about his game getting a continue, but I only had one thought on my mind at the moment. What took you so long, old man? You asked 100 people what makes All Might dangerous in a fight, the majority would say his powerful punches, but that's not true. It's his speed that makes him a terrifying opponent. Strength quirks tend to have trouble landing a hit on those faster than them. With All Might you don't even know you've been hit until you're sent flying. Something the remaining cannon fodder was getting a first-hand demonstration in. I was barely able to keep him in my line of sight. Afterwards I was dragged out from Nomu's grasp none too gently. A small complaint given its strength and my inherent durability. Once my vision was able to come back into focus, I found myself behind my predecessor sitting next to my homeroom teacher who was passed out from fighting non-stop for almost an hour with no break and a recently mangled arm. How hard did he have to work to gain that type of endurance? Well, I exceeded by simply existing. Internal debate later, inform All Might of the situation. All Might, Birdbrain has 2 quirks, shock absorption and regeneration. Punching won't work and I cut his hand off, but he just grew it back in seconds. Breaking his joints only slows him down. Young Midoriya. All Might said while gesturing to me behind his back with an open hand. Then he faced me while peace signing in front of his face like a magic girl. I almost laughed at how ridiculous it was. I got this. He declared, and I could see what he was doing. Every gesture and movement he makes is to reassure those around him. Nobody could be that goofy naturally. He almost got me to laugh while in the middle of a death battle with his persona. Take Aizawa to the entrance while I deal with this. He ordered, breaking my train of thought. I didn't immediately do as he asked. Getting Racerhead away from danger was a priority, but these guys planned to take on All Might while he had 2 heroes to assist him. The odds of them succeeding only go up if he faces them alone. I don't like it, but I guess I need to have faith in his ability to hold out until I get back. That last thought gave me pause. Since when did I start doubting that All Might could win this fight on his own? No more delays, I scooped up Aizawa in a fireman's carry, making sure to hold his arm above the damaged elbow, and booked it to the entrance, using 2% of one for all to push my speed as far as I could without phase shifting, as I now call my speed boost technique. The run to the front entrance took less than a minute. I could hear my classmates talking, but it was just white noise to me. Watching the fight took all of my focus. Despite my warnings, All Might still tried to punch Nomu. Granted, he didn't commit to the blows, but I still felt a twinge of annoyance. Alas, it didn't take him long to change tactics and deliver the mother of all suplexes. It was like a bomb went off. However, Nomu wasn't buried in concrete. Kurogiri somehow managed to open a portal where the monstrosity would have hit the ground. The other end of the portal was underneath All Might, giving Nomu the chance to grab him where his old injury was. Blood started to seep through All Might's shirt. Before he could begin to struggle, I was running at full speed back into the fray. Without the extra weight, I was back at the plaza in half the time it took me to get to the front entrance. Kurogiri moved his portals away from each while still open. Doesn't matter, my plan wouldn't change. At 10 feet from All Might I lunged to try and get to Nomu quicker. Kurogiri however was faster and managed to get in between me and All Might. I couldn't see it, but I knew he was opening a portal to send me who knows where, and he chose the one moment I can't stop my own momentum. Or so he thought. Flowing like a river around a rock, I avoided the portal, moved past All Might and reformed on Nomu's upper back. I could hear the 2 villains in charge's exclamations, but that wasn't important right now. Wasting no time, I changed my right arm into a blade and plunged it through the back of Nomu's neck, severing his spinal cord with a wet squelch. Immediately Nomu's grip slackened and All Might broke free. Once my favorite hero was out of harm's way, I tried to remove my blade from the monstrosity's neck, but was met with firm resistance. Nomu had a firm grip on the part of my blade that was sticking out the front of his neck. How was he able to move with a severed spine? My eyes looked at where the blade went in and switched between several vision spectrums to figure out what was going on. I got my answer. Nomu's nerves grew around my blade and reattached themselves. I didn't even know that was possible. I could have gotten out of this mess by phasing, but the surprise made me stumble for a few seconds. Seconds that allowed the bioweapon and Kurogiri to regroup. Nomu dragged my arm and lower torso through, leaving just my upper body out and positioning Nomu out of the way of their coup de grace. I had no time to phase out of the closing portal. It was like a guillotine coming down from all sides, it was so quick. Now I can't feel my legs or right arm. Midoriya. I heard All Might scream while Shigaraki was laughing like a serial killer. Must be because of the fake blood all around me. I still have no idea why that's the default for when I am injured while in human form. Before I could start pulling myself back together, I heard a familiar bang go off next to Kurogiri, who hasn't moved from where he tried to stop me. But the mighty roar of Bakugo pinned Kurogiri on the ground by his neck brace. Always so dramatic. "Yes, I found your body that time, you smoky bastard," he added. The next sound to reach my ears was the tinkling of Todoroki's ice inkissing Nomu up to his neck, and Kirishima tried to get the drop on Shigaraki, but he managed to dodge. Perfect timing, you guys. I was worried someone was going to get hurt. I shouted, needing to make sure they see I am fine despite being bisected and dismembered. My classmates and teacher all turned to look at me, smiling and waving with my remaining arm. I wish I had a camera to capture the look on all their faces. "The fuck happened to you, Deku?" my best friend asked with a raised eyebrow. He has managed to blow off one of my arms in our spars in middle school, so he knows I am okay, but is probably wondering what was able to cut me in half, considering the effort it took to blast my arm off. I am not so strong as to be able to stop space-time from mending a tear in reality, Kaken. I replied, trying to put Kirishima and Todoroki's minds at ease with my humor. "You could have just said Smokey did it." My friend snarked back. "Sharp as attack that one until he has to read the room, then he may as well be as dumb as brick." "Okay, I'm just going to say it, Midoriya, are you alright?" Kirishima asked, having enough of ignoring my superficial injuries. "You just give me a moment to pull myself together," I replied. Next, I started turning myself around with my one arm so I could face Shigaraki and my arm and lower half that were just a few feet away. My simulated injury making all sorts of squishy sounds that I hoped would unnerve him. No such luck if the lack of movement was anything to go by. "You are an asshole," I swore at the man-child while pointing my finger at him. Kaken started wheezing from trying to hold in his laugh. "I almost never swear, so I will give him that one." Shigaraki flinched at my declaration. That was what I was waiting for. When I was last dismembered, I found out that the separated pieces retain their form rather than falling apart into piles of metal. The smaller the piece, the further I can recall it from. Something I learned from destroying my arm using One for All. Right now, I extended my magnetic field outwards to reconnect my control of my missing parts. Suddenly I could feel my legs as they jerked around like something out of a horror movie. Once the connection was re-established, all three parts of me turned into a flowing mass that coalesced into a rising vortex. Within seconds I looked exactly how I did before this whole mess started. "There we go, good as new," I declared while facing my classmates with my hands on my hips. If goofy poses work for All Might, I figured I may as well give it a try, despite how unnatural it felt. Kids today really are amazing. They make the League of Villains look like amateurs. Especially when they capture my two strongest men. "Can't have that," Shigaraki monologued. "Nomu." But that one word, the monstrosity started to move, despite the ice encasing him. It was not without repercussion though. All four of his limbs broke off, ice shattering with them. Then came the regeneration. It was everyone else's first time seeing it in action, but watching muscle and skin regrow rapidly still makes something in me churn with discomfort. Nomu has been modified to take you on, even at 100% of your power. He's basically a highly efficient punching bag that hits back, Shigaraki explained. "First, we need to free our method of escape. Get him, Nomu." The towering beast moved so suddenly I almost didn't react in time. When a normal person prepares to lunge or sprint, you can see the muscles tensing, the slight lean back to push off. Nomu didn't do any of that. His movements before falling into a sprint were unnatural. Those seconds of a second that it took to figure out that he was going for Kaken meant that I didn't have time to move him out of the way. All Might was moving faster though, and would probably be able to remove Kaken from danger, but at these speeds, I couldn't process that information fast enough. All I could think about is saving Kaken. I once again dispersed my body, but rather than return to a humanoid shape, I enveloped my best friend. Forming makeshift armor over his entire person, extra mass was used to form lightweight plates all along his back and spine, floating an inch off the surface to act as shock absorbers. Then came the impact. All Might managed to push us out of the direct path of Nomu's punch, but only barely. The shockwave from that punch hitting All Might's guard and us being only a foot away from it meant we were sent flying a good 100 feet away. The shock pads I made were put to the test when we finally made contact with the ground again. Every plate was violently pushed back into contact with us, but they did their job and dispersed the majority of the force from hitting the ground. I took the rest and from what I could tell, Kakin wouldn't even have a bruise. We landed next to our fellow classmates with our backs to the entrance. "Wow, you guys dodged it in cool trick Midoriya," Kirishima exclaimed when the dust settled and he could see us. "Shut up, no we didn't, and get off me you damn nerd, I can't see a thing," Kakin replied, showing he was alright if he could still curse. Still, I slipped off of him like water and reformed next to him. "Then how did you get over here?" Kirishima asked. The sound of falling concrete drew our attention and prompted Todoroki to say what we were all thinking. "Isn't it obvious?" All Might was standing in the remains of a cement barrier with his arms in a cross guard, panting heavily. "These are kids and you didn't hold back," All Might accused. "I didn't have much choice." He was threatening my companion. "Besides, these kids are no angels." The not-so-plain-looking one, he cut off Nomu's arm and tried to kill him. What kind of hero does something like that? You think you can get away with being as violent as you want if you say it's for the sake of others? Well, you know what, All Might? That pisses me off. Why do people get to decide that some violent acts are heroic and others are villainous? Casting judgment as to what's good and what's evil. You think you're the symbol of peace? Ha, you're just another government-sponsored instrument of violence. And violence always breeds more violence. I'll make sure the world understands that once you're dead. Shigaraki calmly ranted. I couldn't help the snort that left me. Everyone's eyes on me however sobered my outburst and I took the invitation to speak. Don't talk like a pacifist when you are clearly a textbook sociopath who gets off on death and destruction. It doesn't suit you. Especially after you tried to cut me in half. I viciously dug at him and I could just barely make out the narrowing of his eyes, showing I hit the nail on the head. We've got them outnumbered, Todoroki declared. And Kakin found Misty's weakness. I added while raising my hands, ready to fight. These dudes may act really tough, but we can take him down now with All Might's help. Let's do this. Kirishima said while hardening his arms into makeshift shanks. Don't attack. Get out of here. All Might cut in while putting himself between us and the three villains. A retort about how he would have been in trouble without our help was on the tip of my tongue, but something stopped me. Maybe it was his posture or his expression, but I understood the message wordlessly conveyed. All Might needs to be the one to handle this. Not just for pride, but for his position as the symbol of peace and all that it and he represent. If he lets us help deal the finishing blow, the protection he stands for is shattered and gone. It pains me, but I have to let this play out. Fine, we will sit back and watch a pro at work, I declared with a light-hearted tone, raising my hands up to my sides to keep everyone else from interfering. I could hear Shigaraki whispering some plan to Kurogiri but couldn't make it out. His intentions however became very clear when he said let's clear this level and go home. And ran directly towards us while trying to go around All Might. Heads up, we're fighting after all. But before Shigaraki could make it halfway, everyone felt it. A change in the air, like gravity pressing down just the tiniest bit more on you. Then All Might moved. Shigaraki was blown back from Nomu intercepting All Might's punch. Not that we were faring any better. My classmates and I were blown back even further. Weren't you listening? One of his powers is shock absorption. Shigaraki asked smugly. Yeah? What about it? All Might shot back. And that was the start of a slugfest so fast I started to lose track of some of the punches. The continuous shockwaves kept everyone away with gale force winds. Whoa, they're so fast. Kirishima exclaimed while trying to keep his footing. He said your quirk was only shock absorption, not nullification. That means there's a limit to what you can take, right? All Might asked rhetorically while pressing his attack. Nomu managed to get another punch into All Might's old injury, but that only seemed to piss him off. So, you were made to fight me, big guy. If you can really withstand me firing at 100% of my power, then I will have to go beyond that and force you to surrender. All Might's hits increased in number and intensity, slowly overwhelming Nomu. Unbelievable. He's giving it his all even though he's injured. Those aren't just random punches, either. They're targeted, and every single one of them is more than 100% of his power. A real hero will always find a way for justice to be served. He yelled when Nomu was sent tumbling. Now he's grappling with Nomu. It was happening so fast that I couldn't tell how All Might managed to get him up in the air for such an earth-shattering throw. Literally, the ground shattered from the impact. Nomu even bounced off the decimated concrete. In that moment of weightlessness, All Might landed with the weight of a righteous titan. Now for a lesson. You may have heard these words before, but I will teach you what they really mean. He cocked his fist back, the air steaming from his hand. Go beyond. Plus, ultra. All Might roared while burying his fist into Nomu, his body bulging obscenely from trying to absorb all that kinetic energy. Then his quirk gave out. The ground cracked and exploded again. Nomu was launched through the roof of the USJ and even created holes in the clouds on his trip through the atmosphere. That was like the finishing move in a video game. He beat the shock absorption right out of him. I've never seen that kind of brute strength. Kirishima exclaimed. Imagine having power like that. He must have been punching that monster so fast he couldn't regenerate. Kakin added. Stirring thoughts of my own. That was the remnants of One for All's power. How powerful is the entire quirk? How much strength lies within me, waiting to be released? Will I ever be able to use that much without destroying my arm on the first hit? Before I could spiral into more depreciating thoughts, I turned my gaze away from the giant hole in the roof to All Might. Others couldn't, but I could see through the dust and through him. All the signs of exhaustion laid bare to me. He really is tapped out. If the villains wanted to, they could kill him right now without breaking a sweat. Unless. Before I could talk myself out of it, I silently made my way into the dust cloud while everyone, including the villains, were still gaping at where Nomu went. I pulled All Might further in, his lack of resistance telling me just how utterly spent he was. Though he managed to turn around and see that it was me who pulled him away. At least it was me until I changed to look like him, battle damage and all. Let me do the bluffing, you are shaking too much to be convincing. I whispered. I could see it in his eyes, the anger and frustration. Not directed at me but at himself, because he knows he can't stop me despite how much he wants to. Without resistance he backed away, giving me permission. I walked out of the dust standing tall. Hopefully I can pull this off. You've been bested, villains. Surrender, we all want to get this over with quickly. I boasted. No, he beat me. He's not any weaker at all. And look what he did to my Nomu. He cheated. Shigaraki whisper raged. If I can just keep him flat-footed until the other teachers arrive, we will be golden. Oh, come on, what's going on here? He's just as strong as he's always been. Damn it. Don't tell me I was lied to. This guy's emotions are all over the place, perhaps I can push him in the right direction. What's wrong? Not attacking me? Didn't you say you were going to clear this level earlier? Well, come and get me, if you dare. I antagonized while forming my face into my best guess of what All Might's glare would look like. It seemed to work. Shigaraki started gasping and backing away. Man, this is intense. I heard Kakin whisper despite the distance. As I expected. There's no reason for us to fight now, he'll handle this. Todoroki declared. Wait, where's Midoriya? Kirishima asked. What? Kakin asked while whipping his head around until it fell on me. I could see the gears turning and his eyes widening when the light bulb went off. Ah hell. Bakugo. What's going on? Kirishima asked. That's not All Might. Kakin answered. Damn it, what do you mean? Todoroki asked with a raised eyebrow. That's not All Might, it's Deku pretending to be him. He gritted out through clenched teeth to keep the villains from hearing. Why would he do that? Kirishima whispered, understanding the danger of loud words. Obviously punching a villain into the clouds took more effort than we thought, and Deku is playing chicken to buy time. Kakin answered quickly. He's not wrong. Puffed up like this I don't think I could move properly in a fight. What? Are you scared? I pressed, hoping to push them into surrendering or running away. If only Nomu was here, he'd rush you right now. Pound you into the ground without giving it a second thought. Shigaraki raved while scratching his neck aggressively. Tamura Shigaraki. Please, do not fret. Look at him. He has definitely weakened. Nomu's attacks were successful. He's on his own. The children appear to be frozen in fear. And look, our underlings are recovering. We likely still have a few minutes before their reinforcements arrive. If you and I work together, we can do this. We haven't missed our chance to kill All Might. Virigiri explained soothingly, though I wonder why he thought I was weakened. Perhaps the injuries were too realistic. Yeah, you're right. This is it. We have no choice. We have to do it now. I mean, the big end boss is right here. Shigaraki said while calming down. That's not good. Consider this revenge for what you did to Nomu. He yelled while breaking into a sprint that would make ravenous dogs proud. Shit, what can I do? I could use the finger flick again, but that might not be enough power and would give away that I can't punch them away like All Might. A punch is out of the question, that will damage my whole arm and let the villains know that I'm not All Might. Damn it. Boom. What? I thought before my grin became genuine. Kakin, you maniac, jumping in and delivering the mother of all explosions to their faces, and they call me reckless. Todoroki followed up with a barrage of ice to try and capture the disoriented villains, thought they were only pushed back. The help was appreciated. Kirishima pulled up the rear. Before any witty remarks could be exchanged, gunshots rang out. 4 in rapid succession. 2 hit Shigaraki's hands, while 2 more went somewhere out in the distance. The teachers were too far away to hear, except for Present Mick when he used his quirk to subdue the cannon fodder by the fountain. Despite the noise, all I could feel was the kind of relief that uncoils muscles you didn't even know you had. sometimes literally in my case. Aw, man. The pros are here. It's game over. For real. Let's go home and try this when we can, and that's how far the man-child got before 2 more shots hit his legs. Kurogiri used his mist to shield him from more shots until 13 pushed through the pain and tried to capture them with Black Hole. Though not before Kurogiri could portal away most of Shigaraki. His head still sticking out. I may have failed to kill you this time, but your days are numbered. All Might. Symbol of peace. I am going to kill you. He said before the rest of him disappeared into the portal and that too followed them to wherever they went. Black Hole was turned off shortly after. Start talking, nerd. Growled a familiar voice. Hiroshima and Todoroki were both putting in their 2 cents, but I couldn't focus on what they were saying. How the hell am I going to get out of this one? It's alright, Midoriya better just rip the band-aid off. All Might said while the dust receded, revealing his emaciated form. Who are you? Kirishima asked. That's All Might. I deadpanned while shifting back to my normal self. The 3 sets of widening eyes and head whipping would be more funny if it were any other situation. Eyes, I can see Cementus coming, why don't I explain while we make our way to the entrance? I offered while looking at All Might to see if he approved me taking over story time. The slight nod of his head was all I needed. Don't leave anything out. Kakin snarled, more out of reflex than any actual hostility. And with that the 4 of us walked towards the ridiculously tall stairs while I recounted a downplayed version of the truth. I didn't go into detail of how bad the injury was, just that it was slowing him down. Given he's almost 50 years old, that's believable. It even ties into why he's started teaching at UA nicely. No super secret quirks, missing organs or hidden successors here. The rest of the day passed by in a haze. At least for me. That day I learned what pros can really do and what they fight against to keep people safe. A revelation I wasn't prepared for. Yet I survived, despite being cut in half. I should probably be more freaked out about that, but I'm not. Is it because of the lack of any permanent damage, or is it something inherently wrong with me? Regardless, my thoughts weren't focused on my own psychology, but rather how outclassed I was by both the pros and the villains. Sure, I held my own against Nomu, but that was it, I held out. All Might however defeated it with the leftovers from One for All, while I was only able to hold out with the entire quirk and my own on top of it. Logic wasn't helping, the weight in my chest and the constriction in my throat. And the hits just keep on coming. When I finally got home after talking with the police and teachers, Mom tells me that my dad is coming tomorrow. Let me clarify. My mom and dad dated for a while until his work overseas dragged him back. While they didn't change their contact information, they drifted apart fast. Apparently, with how obsessed he was with his job, Mom decided it was better not to tell him she was pregnant. Nurses get such good benefits. Now though, he called her out of the blue and said he's finally able to take a break more regularly and asked if he could visit. Mom replied with, I have a son, I'm single and sure, same address. Then hung up. Guess even adults sometimes don't know how to handle these things. He texted back that he would be coming by at lunchtime. The unexpected 2 days off from school was supposed to be for us to rest after what happened, not wade through family drama. All morning all I could think about was, what was he like? Questions I never bothered to ask because I was too busy training my quirk were now flooding my mind. The video of All Might's debut was playing in the background, keeping me from venturing too far down the rabbit hole. The knock on the door seemed louder than normal. Before I could stop myself, I was leaving my room and staring down the hallway to the open door of our apartment. I knew he was American, but seeing him in person drove that fact home. It was strange to see pieces of my face on someone else's. His hair, while black, had the same curl to it as mine. His eyes though were an Arctic blue, like a wolf in the tundra. When those wolf eyes met mine, his face slackened. I was probably doing the same. Wordlessly he walked past Mom and towards me, showing how tall he is. I'm pushing 6 feet, but he's still got more than a few inches on me. We just stood there for what felt like forever. Then he moved. It was so sudden that I didn't know what happened until his hand was around my throat, my back slammed into the wall and my feet off the ground. What did you do with Inko-san, you metal motherfucker? He shouted. I did say hits, as in plural, right. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support the JUSTUS3138 for writing that awesome fanfic. See you in the next video. Goodbye.